Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet world, West Alabama. How are we doing today? This is the Joe Gaither Show right here on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. I am, of course, Joe Gaither. You are the listener, the viewer, watching us on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, checking us out on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, or Spotify. We appreciate everybody who is taking a moment to check us out on the BamaCentral YouTube channel. You can find all kinds of great things on the BamaCentral YouTube channel, including on Saturday, our friend Katie Wyndham spent a little time with Justice Haynes, so you can check out her conversation with Justice Haynes right there on the BamaCentral YouTube channel. You can always subscribe, rate, and review us on podcast platforms if you'd rather just listen to us, because I do have that face for radio right there on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. We appreciate everybody who has subscribed, rated, or reviewed the program. We invite you guys to jump in and join us on the comment section at Joe Gaither 6. You can send me a comment, a question, a query, or complaint right there at Joe Gaither 6 on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, and we'll pop it up and respond to it accordingly. How was you guys' weekend? I hope you guys had a great one. I had a fun weekend, had a good weekend, productive weekend, and it was a productive weekend around the Alabama football program. So I want to talk a lot of recruiting, and then we'll touch on Isaiah Buggs towards the end of the program. If you got a question, again, you can comment on us at Joe Gaither 6. But let's start. Oh, man, you know what I didn't do? I didn't get my Micah DeBoer's video file ready. So hold on one second. Let's get that ready right there. There we go. Perfect. We'll start with Micah DeBoer and his commitment over the weekend. Alabama bringing in commitment number 18, right? 18 commits now in the class of 2025, with Micah DeBoer becoming the latest Alabama football player to commit to the Crimson Tide. Let's check him out right here as we're looking at his huddle tape. If you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, you can watch it along with us. But if you're not, if you're listening to us, we'll describe what we see out of the 6'5", 315-pound tackle from Gaither High School right down there in Mobile, Alabama. Micah DeBoer is the number 8 overall prospect in the state of Alabama. He's the number 8 tackle in the class, according to 24/7 Sports. And so let's talk about what we see. He's a big old boy playing left tackle for Gaither down there in Mobile, and you can see it right off the bat with his tape. He's explosive. He's very aggressive with his hands. He's a finisher. Most of these blocks that we're looking at right here from his huddle tape end up with a defender on their behind. So he's got a little bit of a nasty streak. And I like that. One thing that you do also see is really, really good hips. And you see him really being able to use his body very, very well. That's also something that he uses in track and field, as he's a shot put and discus thrower in track and field. And let's see. I think he should shot put throw. I think I read that he threw 50-something feet in the shot put pretty recently this past spring. So he's able to use his hips very, very well and has very good body control. One little, small negative that we see is I think that he has a little bit of wasted movement with his feet. I think his footwork needs to improve a little bit. But come on, this is a rising senior in high school. He's not an NFL level prospect right now. He will be. I think he has all the potential to become a great, great offensive lineman in college and to become a great offensive lineman in the NFL if he just continues to develop. And it seems like he's going to do that here at the Capstone. I'm very excited about him because on Thursday, when we talked about the huge recruiting weekend, we pointed out all the big dogs, all the 5 stars that were coming. But to me, is important for Alabama to really start to make some dents in the state of Alabama. And we'll talk about Kalen DeBoer and his philosophy over the program. But you pull in the number 8 overall prospect in the state, and this is 3 top 10 players in the state, along with Turbo Rogers, Anthony Turbo Rogers, and who's the other one? I just had it, but lost it in my brain. Turbo Rogers, Mikey DeBoer. And is it Miles Johnson was the number 12? I believe Miles Johnson was the number 12 overall prospect. So you get 3 guys in the top 12 in the state in a class cycle that you started late with. I mean, come on. Alabama's this recruiting staff, this Kalen DeBoer's staff got here in January. They're basically right on time for the 2026ers, but you're definitely late for the 2025ers. And you're seeing a lot of people online talking about, oh, these guys are still being recruited by Nick Saban, and we'll get into that as well. But this is a new staff who was trying to make up ground in the state of Alabama and really nationally, and trying to salvage a class after you had decommit after decommit after decommit right as soon as Nick Saban retired. So you had to really go back out there and salvage the class. And you bring in Micah DeBoer over the weekend. He becomes your 18th overall commitment in the class. And you look at all the rankings, and Alabama sitting there with the number 2 overall recruiting class according to 24/7 Sports. So I like what you have in Micah DeBoer. He is a mammoth of a human, and he joins an offensive line class that includes Michael Carroll, Mal Waldrop, and Jackson Lloyd. Jackson Lloyd and Mal Waldrop and Micah DeBoer all playing left tackle for their respective high schools. Michael Carroll's playing left and right guard up there in Pennsylvania. But you love an offensive line class that's loaded with left tackles. And, of course, they're not all going to play left tackle when they come to Tuscaloosa. Things will translate to the college level, and guys will shuffle around. You'll see some guys go to the right side. A couple of guys bump inside. I think Mal Waldrop is a candidate to play guard. I think Michael Carroll will continue to play guard. And, honestly, I think Micah DeBoer is kind of a candidate to do either. Jackson Lloyd, I think, is definitely a tackle. And you look at the rest of the class, the remainder of the class, and you see Ty Haywood out there crystal balled, and we'll talk about all the guys that are crystal balled to Alabama after this weekend. And you see 2 guys in Ty Haywood and Jackson Lloyd that can play left tackle at the college level. And so, goodness gracious, this class is absolutely becoming a historic class. It seems like it was always going to be historic because it was Kalen DeBoer's very first class. So no matter what, whether it finished at 100 or at 1, it was always going to be historic. It's the first class. You think back, you had Nick Saban, hired in 2007. His first full recruiting class, 2008, was absolutely incredible. You have Julio Jones, Mark Ingram, and really Mark Barron. You had, the who's who really coming into B.J. Scott as well, was a 5-star player. It was a great class. But my goodness, could this class of 2025 exceed not only the 2008 class, but could it exceed every single class under Nick Saban? I mean, I think about the crown jewel class from Nick Saban as the 2017 class, the Tua Tagovailoa class, Najee Harris class, the Devontae Smith, Jerry Jeudy class right there. I think that was probably Nick Saban's overall top recruiting class as a whole. But this class that Kalen DeBoer has started to build or has been building, they're sitting there with 18 commitments, and they've got, 2 + 5, 7 more maybe, 7 to 8 more spots to fill. You're probably going to end up with anywhere between 24 and 28 guys in the class when it's all said and done. And when you look at the guys, the prospects that Alabama is in on at the moment, it is absolutely absurd. It's absurd to think where it could be. And, of course, you are looking at the composite rankings, and you're seeing Alabama climb, and are doing the tradition. They're doing exactly what Alabama would have done under Nick Saban as far as, starting slow. You talk about the spring. Is Nick Saban, has he lost his touch? Middle of the summer, he's starting to climb into the top 10. And late summer, oh, my gosh, he's pushing for the number 1 overall class again. And so it's almost like he never even left. Kalen DeBoer, you look at the guys that were on campus this weekend. You saw Justice Terry, number 2 defensive lineman in the class. You saw Caleb Cunningham, number 1, number 2, number 3 wide receiver in the class. You see Dijon Lee, number 1, 2, or 3 cornerback in the class. And we've talked a lot about Dijon Lee before. I think he's going to be an absolute stud wherever he goes to college. 6'3", 200-pound cornerback, long and rangy, very athletic, very good hips. Very fast guy. And you think about, there's no way Kalen DeBoer and this offensive class, Courtney Morgan, and this coaching staff is going to be able to get all of these guys into campus and all of these guys committed. But you look at the experts on the recruiting trail, the guys at On 3 Sports, the guys at Bama Online, the guys at 24/7 Sports, the guys who are really, really dialed into these recruits. And I'm doing my best to do so, but I admit there are definitely pundits who are more plugged in than I am. You look at those guys who are submitting crystal balls and submitting predictions for some of these high schoolers, and you're saying, this 5-star predicted to go to Alabama. That 5-star predicted to go to Alabama. The other 5-star predicted to go to Alabama. And it just becomes almost absurd. Almost absurd to think about how talented this class could end up being for Kalen DeBoer, his very first class as head coach of the University of Alabama, and really where they were in January. Where were they in January? You had Anthony Turbo Rogers, and you had the T.R. Miller, Miles Johnson. Miles Johnson committed into the class. Pretty much everyone else decommitted from the class outside of Turbo Rogers and Miles Johnson. So you bring in guys like Jackson Lloyd. You bring in guys like Chuck McDonald. You hit two modern-day players, Chuck McDonald and Abdul Sanders. You bring in Luke Metz from Georgia, and you say, he's a 3-star, but then you see every single SEC school basically going after that guy. It is just absolutely absurd. You see Latia Brooks, the New Jersey wide receiver. 3 stars? Well, he only owns a lot of South Jersey receiving records in 3 years. He's reportedly one of the fastest wide receivers in the class. And so, look, if the class is capped right here at 18, it's a special class. It's a really, really strong class. But you look at the rest of the summer and you look at, guys with commitment dates coming out. Dijon Lee is going to commit on the 28th, I believe. You see guys who are getting ready to commit or who have been ready to commit reportedly in Dawson Merritt. You see some of these guys who are ready to pull the trigger and make decisions. A lot of prospects who are still in the decision-making process. And you think, well, if Alabama can get 3 of them, if Alabama can get 2 of them, if Alabama can get 4 of them, then, the class is that much better. You can overtake Ohio State for the number 1 overall class if you commit Dawson Merritt, if you commit Ty Haywood, and if you commit Justice Terry. Boom, just those 3. You could have the number 1 overall class. And then you talk about, Caleb Cunningham. And, of course, we kind of played around with it last week. Caleb Cunningham always updating his number 1 overall school after each official visit. And Alabama gets the same treatment. He comes to Tuscaloosa for an official visit this past weekend and says, boom, Alabama's my number 1 school. You add Caleb Cunningham. You add Dijon Lee. That's 5 guys right off the bat. And no, Dawson Merritt's not listed as a 5-star, but the other 4 are listed as 5 stars. You add those 3 guys and then 2 more on top of that, you're looking at a number 1 overall class that has cushion over Ohio State. And, of course, everybody's looking at Ohio State from the Alabama perspective and saying, couldn't you flip Naeem Alford? Still think that's going to be pretty unlikely. I still think that's going to be pretty challenging for Alabama to do. But goodness gracious, from where you started in January with 2 commits, Amir Rogers, Turbo Rogers, Anthony, not Amir, Anthony Turbo Rogers, and Miles Johnson, 2 kids from Alabama, stayed committed. You're at 2, and you've basically taken your recruiting from what Nick Saban used to do nationwide. I mean, and Coach Saban recruited coast to coast as well and recruited internationally as well. But you basically said, okay, Coach Saban is gone, a new staff is here, but the train keeps rolling. And I just think it's absolutely absurd what you've seen over the last, you're in the 6th month of the year, so the last 5 months, right? The work that they've done over the last 5 months. Now, I believe today starts the NCAA mandated dead period. So you're cutting off contact. Lots of the coaches are going to go on vacation. You'll rotate vacations as the coaching staff pretty much prepares for fall camp. That's the next big step for the coaching staff. The players, the guys on campus will continue to go through summer 1. I think summer 2 gets started pretty soon. And, of course, it won't be as intensive, but things are going to get ramped up. The next big thing for Alabama is fall camp. Now let's talk about this class and why or how it's come together. Dispel some narratives, if we may. Look, Kalen DeBoer, when he came to Tuscaloosa, and we've talked about this on the show before. Oh, he's Husky Harson. He's not going to be able to recruit the South. He's not going to be able to recruit at Alabama. He doesn't know any of these high school coaches. He doesn't know the landscape. He doesn't this. He doesn't that. He can't this. He can't that. And you look at what he did, Kalen DeBoer, with his staffing. And of course, a lot of the staff, per tradition, as soon as you come in to take over a new head coaching job, per tradition, you're going to implement your own staff. You bring in Courtney Morgan, you hire a lot of your own assistant coaches, you retain two very, very important coaches. You retain Freddie Roach on the defensive line, you retain Robert Gillespie in the running backs room. You tried to retain the young man who went to Georgia, whose face just popped in my head, but now I cannot his name on the tip of my tongue. But basically, you kept Freddie Roach and Robert Gillespie, right? And what else did you do? You turned over some of your support staff. You turned a lot of the media staff, the film and the creative staff got turned over. A lot of the nutrition staff, unfortunately, got turned over. But who stayed? Who stayed? A lot of the player development staff stayed, and a lot of the recruiting staff stayed. You kept some of the secretaries. You kept some of basically you kept a lot of the sports staff. You look at Josh Chapman. You look at HaHa Clinton Dix. You look at Denzel Duvall. They're still on staff. And so while Nick Saban is gone, you kept a lot of his engine basically in the car. Nick Saban, the driver, has hung up his racing helmet, but a lot of the pieces of the engine are still right there in the building. And so, what did you think was going to happen? What did you think was going to happen when Kalen DeBoer came to Tuscaloosa? And we've talked about the aspect of, he's been operating with less his entire career, operating with less at Sioux Falls, operating with less at Indiana, at Fresno State, at Washington. Okay, we've been basically making chicken salad out of chicken bleep in all of my stops. Oh, and now I have the ingredients? Now I have some of the best facilities in the country. You can debate facilities who however you want, but the fact remains that Alabama's in the top 5 in facilities. Oh, I have a world-class dining hall that I can show off. Oh, I have a world-class practice facility that I can show off. Oh, I have tutors on tutors on tutors for academic support staff that I can show off to my prospective recruits. Oh, I have great dormitories. I have, oh my gosh, a top 3 stadium in the country that you guys are going to be playing in. You think about it, what happened at A-Day, you had more Alabama fans at A-Day than Washington even holds. So, of course, everything was going to ramp up. Oh, and then we're going to bring in Courtney Morgan. And you talk about, I've never heard of a general manager in college football before, but Courtney Morgan built the 2 national championship rosters this past year. He wasn't in Michigan this past year, but he spent time building the Michigan roster, putting it together. And you talk about Michigan. Just think about, where's their 5 stars? Oh, they had a bunch of 3 stars. Oh, Jim Harbaugh coaching them up, development. Or maybe Courtney Morgan is an excellent evaluator, probably a little column A, a little column B. You got to give Harbaugh credit. I think he is a very solid football coach, obviously now in the NFL. But Courtney Morgan identified these players both as athletes and as men, as, what's their mental makeup? Are these guys a take or not? And then he goes to Washington with Kalen DeBoer and constructs the Washington roster as well. So, of course, this man has extensive experience building championship rosters, and then you're going to give him all the tools and toys that Alabama has. And not only that, but you have the national reach, the brand. You heard about it from all the assistant coaches the first time that they were on the road when the recruiting calendar turned over and the guys could get out of the facility for the first time. They talked about, oh my gosh, everybody's responding to the A on my chest. Everybody's responding to the block A with the elephant coming out. I didn't realize how strong the brand was. Lots of them saying that. Lots of them espousing a little bit of surprise. And maybe it's not a surprise to you as someone who's followed the program, but the brand has power going coast to coast to coast. You heard Coach Saban, I was in Italy and I got a Roll Tide last summer. Great. I'll just tell you this. My parents are vacationing right now abroad, and my parents are both Georgia grads wearing their Georgia hat. And my mother sends me a message, says, "Oh, your dad was wearing his Georgia hat in the streets here in Europe and got a Roll Tide." I said, "Yeah, it's worldwide. It's worldwide." And so this should not be a surprise to you. And honestly, it's credit to Greg Byrne. It's credit to Greg Byrne again. You look at Greg Byrne and his hiring practices, and, some people have their own complaints about how Greg Byrne has maybe taken Alabama into a more corporate place, and he's done that out of necessity. Okay, he might be pricing some of the average fans out a little bit here and there, but his hiring of actual coaches, of his vision for each individual program, I think is evident. You saw it with Nate Oates. Oh, we're going to get a really innovative mind. We're going to get a young, hungry, innovative mind who's going to play an NBA style that attracts prospects and that really stresses out the other team and becomes a challenging team to play. And Nate Oates, in 5 years, has taken Alabama to the Final Four, a place that Alabama had never been in basketball. I think you're seeing the same sort of thing with Rob Vaughn in baseball. As soon as Brad Bohannon has his scandal and, we got to go in a different direction. Now, Rob Vaughn's story is still to be told. Absolutely, still to be told. But through 1 year, he basically band-aids the program. He band-aids the program and gets players in. Some players he's familiar with and some that he's not as familiar with. And you can complain about how the season ended, and I would say you're justified because, yeah, the season kind of sputtered out, really. But on the whole, take the whole, the baseball season was really strong compared to maybe the gaping war wounds that was left by Brad Bohannon. I think, you get back to a regional and you finish it in the upper part of the SEC. Of course, you wanted to advance further in postseason play, but I think that Rob Vaughn is right on track. And so what did you do when Nick Saban retired? When Nick Saban retired, I thought, oh, goodness gracious, oh, goodness. And Greg Byrne says, okay, I've got 3 or 4 different minds in mind, and I'm going to go replace Nick Saban with a guy who's, what was the record? 103-10, isn't that right? 107-10 or something like. Well, let's find out. I don't want to BS you. Kalen DeBoer. I don't want to BS you. It's 100 and something and very few losses. Yeah, it's 104-12. I'm going to take a guy who's 104-12. Who's won 3 NAIA championships. How do you win an NAIA championship? You don't really do it recruiting because, come on, when I was in high school, I would have been an NAIA candidate. Not a good athlete. Not a great, not Division I. You win NAIA championships by good game planning, by calling the right plays at the right time, by game management. You got to manage the clock and manage the game flow, and elevating your roster, elevating the talent that's on your roster, getting the most out of your talent on the roster. And you see the same sort of thing when he goes to Indiana and, they have a really strong season. He goes to Fresno State and they're having stronger seasons. And then, I'm going to put Washington in the national championship. So he goes out and hires a great game day coach. He goes out and hires a strong developer. He goes out and hires somebody who's going to elevate the player, each individual player. He's going to, one, put them in strong positions, and that's why I think the people talking about Jalen Milroe not being a fit for his offense are absolutely foolish. Absolutely foolish. Because I think that, of course, Jalen Milroe has a couple deficiencies in his game, and I think that everybody who's watching Alabama can really identify that. But I think Kalen DeBoer is going to say, you know what, we're going to work with your strengths, we're going to minimize your weaknesses, and we're going to put you in positions to succeed. And I think he's going to do that for not only Jalen Milroe, but for every player on this Alabama roster. And so you go out and hire this guy, and he says, Nick Saban, master recruiter, I'm not going to turn over the recruiting staff. Maybe a change or two, but on the whole, we're going to keep the recruiting staff, and then I'm going to bring in the guys who have helped me. And look, think about how many head coaches are on this coaching staff at the moment. Everybody being co-defensive coordinator this and co-defensive coordinator that. And it's just like, it was silly. The narrative that Alabama's going to fall off. Now, look, that doesn't mean that Alabama's not going to that Alabama's going to win a national championship this year. That's to be determined for sure. But right now, the setup, the preseason for 2024 has gone about as strongly as any preseason that you could ever remember. I mean, come on. I'll take your comments at Joe Gaither 6 for any other preseason that went smoother. And you throw in the coaching transition and turnover from Saban to DeBoer. This is absolutely wild. It's absolutely absurd. And of course, everybody's expecting, oh, Nick Saban's gone. Ding dong, the witch is dead. Alabama's going to go away. And of course, the results of the season are still to be determined. But it's not like they went out and hired, Billy from, it's not like they went out and hired me, who's never coached a game, who's never, recruited a prospect, who's never done anything like that at that high level. No, they went out and hired a guy who's been grinding his whole career, making more with less. I'm going to take the lemonade and I'm going to take the lemons and I'm going to make lemonade. That's absolutely absurd. So you're seeing a couple different narratives. One, Nick Saban is still recruiting these guys. Nick Saban is still around the program. These guys aren't committing to Kalen DeBoer. They're committing because Nick Saban is still involved. And I think that's absolutely foolish. Absolutely foolish. Now, I think it's foolish to say that Nick Saban's not involved, but they're not committing to Nick Saban, these athletes. Micah DeBoer this past weekend didn't commit to Nick Saban. And look, we talked about we talked about following other experts. Andrew Bone from On3 Sports from Bama Online goes out onto Twitter today and says that Nick Saban has not been involved in any of these official visitor weekends. Yeah, Nick Saban hasn't been at UA. This is his tweet, at Andrew J. Bone. We appreciate all his great work. Nick Saban hasn't been at UA for a single official visit weekend this year. He took a photo with a few recruits at A-Day who they met for 5 minutes, and somehow it's turned into he's helping recruit. He's built a juggernaut, but it's Kalen DeBoer and this staff's team now. That was Andrew Bone's tweet about 2 hours ago. And look, would it be foolish to say that Nick Saban's not involved? Yes. But it's also equally foolish to say that he's out there at all these visit weekends and calling recruits and saying, this is why you should come to Alabama and this, that, and the other. I think that Nick Saban might be at a dinner or two, might be talking to donors or two, but that man is pretty comfortably retired, in my opinion. Now, he's going to get ready for the fall. He's going to get ready for his new career at ESPN. He's going to be on College Game Day. And so you talk about recruiting this fall. He's not really going to be involved. I think that Nick Saban's next real chance that you're going to see him in Tuscaloosa, real public viewing of Nick Saban, is probably going to be for that Alabama-Georgia game when, now this isn't news and it's not broken, but I do believe the College Game Day is going to be in Tuscaloosa for that, September 28th weekend, that 5th week of college football. I think that that's a pretty much shoo-in. But he's not sitting here recruiting. He's not sitting here calling recruits, hosting weekends. He's not taking them on tours. And they talk about, he's got an office in Bryant-Denny Stadium. I don't know how often he's using that office, but I would imagine fairly seldomly. As my dog snores next to me. I hope you're not snoring right here, watching us on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, or Spotify. But I don't think Nick Saban is really heavily involved in this recruiting process. And it's not like he's game planning for anything. It's not like he's calling these recruits saying, look, you got to commit to Kalen DeBoer. I'll be there every day. You got to commit to Kalen DeBoer. I'll be helping Kane Womack every day. That's a load of hooey. And the other thing, the other narrative that's coming out is, Alabama's dropping bags on these recruits. Alabama's spending millions of dollars to get these commitments. Alabama's promising NIL left and right. And while I don't think that that's absolutely true, I don't know for sure. I'll just be honest. I don't know if they're offering $1.5 million or $1 million or $800,000. I have no idea. But my response to that is, who cares? Who cares? What's the problem with that? And you guys can educate me in the comments if there is a problem with that I'm absolutely missing. But aren't we in the NIL era of college football? I mean, go back to what, 2 years ago, Nick Saban, Texas A&M bought their entire recruiting class. Now, it didn't pan out for a national championship for Texas A&M, and a lot of those players did transfer out, but they were on campus in College Station for a year, and who knows what they got paid. But who cares what they got paid anyways? You talk about, Nick Saban talking about a recruit. We had a recruit that wanted to go to Alabama, but asked us how much money we could pay. Man, that's the name of the game. And Nick Saban didn't want to play that game anymore. And there's no disrespect to Coach Saban. Golly, the GOAT. No disrespect to him, but he didn't want to play that game. He didn't want to play that style anymore. He didn't want to compete with the Texases, the Miamis, the Ohio States, the Texas A&Ms, who are, Tennessee dropping $8 million on Nico Iamaleava. Who cares? That's the way the game is being played right now. So if Alabama's historic recruiting class is due to, promises of money, well, buddy, that's why Nick Saban retired. That's why you hire a younger coach with a young staff, an energized staff who's familiar with the way the game is played. Look through the staff. It's all kinds of guys who are, under 50, who are under 60. Really, these guys know the way the game is being played right now. So it's not a diss, in my opinion. Alabama's recruiting with money. Shoot, why are you not recruiting with money? Why are you not using all the resources that you have to entice these guys, to entice these players into the program? Now, you can fast forward 12 months from now, or you can fast forward, really, I guess it'll be December. We'll be, they'll be here in December. All right. So fast forward 6 months plus 12, right? 18 months, right? After these guys' first semester, after these guys' first fall semester, sure, some of them will go into the transfer portal. That's also the way the game is played. Some of the players will go in the transfer portal. You're not going to keep whatever the number ends up being. You're at 23, you're at 27, you're at 25, whatever the number ends up being for these commitments. That's not going to be the same amount of guys who finish all the way through at Alabama. That's just not going to be that way. But you have to bring them in. You have to continuously bring in the talent because you're going to be losing talent through the portal and through other means. Some guys are going to wash out. Some guys are going to transfer out. Some guys are just not going to be as good as advertised. So you continue to bring in top-level recruits and use whatever means necessary. Whether it's the, look at this nice weight room, we'll get you nice and strong. Or it's the, we've got a big old check for you that will either, make you a wealthy prospect or help your family or benefit you in any number of ways. Look at this nice dining room. You'll be eating steak every night. Like, this is just part of the recruiting game. Look at this nice, beautiful stadium. You're going to be playing under the lights, under Dixieland Delight. You're going to find out what these guys care about. And of course, money is going to be part of it. So who cares if the new staff is using money or not, to entice the recruits? Now, I don't know if that's been a more emphasized aspect of recruiting. I'm not sitting here reporting that, but I am dispelling the narrative that it's a negative. It's not a negative. Welcome to modern college football. Let's play modern college football at the highest level. Let's ensure, just from an Alabama perspective, let's ensure that you're not falling behind. I think Coach Saban found that to be a bridge that he didn't want to cross. And that's fine. Coach was principled in that area. No hate on that. That was his principle. That's the way he wanted to play it. That was his philosophy for college football. And that's okay. But he decided no more, not enough. And so you refresh the staff and you say, okay, this is going to be an area where Alabama's not going to be falling behind anymore. And it's so funny. It's so funny where, 6-8 months ago, it's Alabama's NIL is not very good. Alabama's NIL is falling behind. Alabama doesn't have NIL like the Texas, Ohio States, like the Miamis. But now that Alabama is on the cusp of the number one recruiting class in the country, they're dropping bags on this player. They're dropping bags on that player. Everybody's going to Alabama to get paid. So really, these narratives are just funny to watch online and see how they all play out. We'll continue to follow recruiting right here on the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. We will look at each guy as they commit. I'm waiting for Dawson Merritt. I'm waiting for Ty Haywood. I'm waiting for Justice Terry and Caleb Cunningham. I think those could come pretty much any time now. Dijon Lee is committing on Friday, June 28th. And I feel very strongly that Dijon Lee is going to be coming to Alabama. He's been here a bunch of different times. And you bring Dijon Lee and add him into the cornerback class with Chuck McDonald and with Zamir Smith. And you've got three corners who are about as good as any three corners that you could assemble, at least for the class of 2025. And that would be back-to-back years of strong cornerback classes. You look at what's going on with the wide receivers. You see Kalik McDermott, right? McDermott. Ooh, let's not mess this up, Joe. We want to go to offers. And you see Caleb Cunningham. So you're looking at a great wide receiver class again this year. Latsir Brooks, underrated as all get out. But you look at the wide receivers that Alabama is potentially in on, and I think it's going to be a very, very special, very special class. You see Derek Meadows from Bishop Gorman is also seeming like, okay, maybe he's going to be that guy as well. You're in on Kalik Lockett, the number 3 overall wide receiver in the class. You got 3 guys right there who are loaded in the top 15, along with Latsir Brooks. This wide receiver class can be absolutely special. I think that Justice Terry really enjoyed his visit this past weekend, the number 2 defensive lineman in the country. And so all these things could be happening, and I think before the end of the month of June. So in 5 months, you go from 2 recruits in Anthony Turbo Rogers and Miles Johnson, 2 in-state guys committed to Alabama, to what? That'd be 23, 24. You go from, I only have 2 commits to now you have the nation's number 1 overall recruiting class. I think it stands to be a wild 5 months for this year, for this staff as a whole. And so it just makes me excited about what the product is actually going to be on the field. I think a refresh is the main word that comes into my mind. A refresh on the recruiting front, a refresh on the schematic front, and, maybe that will translate to a refresh in discipline and a refresh in really attention to detail on the field. And it could be a really, really special season right here in Tuscaloosa. Last thing for us as we get out of here, we want to talk about Isaiah Buggs just a little bit. Isaiah Buggs was released by the Kansas City Chiefs today. And if you have not paid any attention to Isaiah Buggs, he's had a very difficult offseason since being a part of the Kansas City Chiefs roster. He's been in a heap of different trouble here in Tuscaloosa with his business, King's Lounge, King's Hookah Bar and Lounge. Look, you've got different stories. You've got conflicting stories from Isaiah Buggs. Isaiah Buggs has been talking, the Tuscaloosa Police Department has been targeting me unfairly. But then you look at the charges and you see, some of this stuff is really bad, my man. You've got the animal cruelty charge that, he's unfortunately or allegedly, left dogs in an apartment in a property unattended, and one of them died. The other one was really starving and really hungry, and just in a bad shape. He says, I didn't even know they were in there. It's not my dogs. I'm barely at that property. I don't know that they were in there. Okay. You've got many instances at the King's Hookah Lounge. Overcrowding, not obeying curfew, and oh my gosh, assault with a deadly weapon, a couple gun charges out there in the parking lot. And then you see a week ago, he's getting in trouble for aggravated burglary. He's going into a girlfriend or her friend's house and really seems like really scaring her. Now you're seeing Isaiah Buggs basically say the Tuscaloosa Police is targeting me because they want to get King's Hookah Lounge shut down. It seems like I believe that King's Hookah Lounge has agreed to cease business. And so just a terrible story all around, whatever side you believe in. Usually I will admit I'm usually pro-citizen and anti-authority a little bit, but it sounds like the authority might have some good reason for being involved in a lot of these cases. But on the football side of things, for Isaiah Buggs, this is just things that it cannot happen if you want to continue playing in the NFL, especially if you are a habitual practice squatter. If you are a habitual 53rd, 56th man on the roster. He's not Chris Jones for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's not even Rashee Rice. You see what's going on with the Chiefs. They have a lot of guys that have gotten in trouble this past offseason. But the guys who have gotten in trouble and stayed on the team are big-time contributors. And unfortunately, I mean, I'm pulling for you, Isaiah Buggs, as a human and as a football player, just because I just want the best for everyone. You can't do that if you're bottom end of the roster and continue to basically, you can't have these instances, whether he is being unfairly targeted or not. That's not for me to say. That's not for me to know. I don't know those details very, very well. I just kind of see what comes across my thread on the Twitter machine. But NFL teams, they're just not going to put up with stuff like that. And so for Isaiah Buggs, I'm hoping that you can put this all behind you. I'm hoping you can resolve these legal issues. I'm hoping that you can mature from these legal issues and become a business owner again. That's great. Be a local business owner and influence the economy in a positive way. Right here in Tuscaloosa, but also for yourself. I hope that you can put these stuff behind you and focus on your own talents. I mean, you're still a very talented football player. He's been with the Lions. He's with the Chiefs this past year just a little bit. He was on the practice squad. He got himself a Super Bowl ring, even though the inside of the Super Bowl ring had some misinformation on it. He's a Super Bowl champion. And so I hope that he can put all this behind him as he's unfortunately released by the Kansas City Chiefs today. And so we'll see what the next steps and next parts of his story are. I pull for positivity for him personally on the field and off the field, just for the city of Tuscaloosa. And so we will watch and see what happens with Isaiah Buggs. That's going to do it for our show today. As we get out of here, I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on with the show. We're separating all these little segments. We've talked about the Walsh Riding Network several different times over the last couple of weeks as we've expanded our coverage to Mississippi State, Missouri, to the San Antonio Spurs, to the Kansas City Royals, to the University of Miami, and to Boston College. We are still going to be doing those segments, but we are breaking them off on their own separate podcasts, so they're not going to be contaminating the Alabama coverage. We appreciate everyone who has watched us on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter on the BamaCentral YouTube channel. If you want those other storylines or those other topics, you can go to their own sites on the Walsh Riding Network, and I will be putting those on my own social media at Joe Gaither 6. It'll be, I believe, Cowbell Country. It'll be the Zoo. It'll be, I believe, Spurs Central, Royal Central. It'll be Kane Central. So we'll have all those sites and all those segments in their own podcast, so that if you're only here listening for the baseball talk, you'll be looking at us with the Royals, with the Kansas City Royals, and on Royal Central. If you're only here for the basketball talk and the NBA talk, it'll be with the Spurs Central and San Antonio on SI. So those segments will continue, but they're going to be broken off in their own separate websites, so that maybe our listeners and our viewers can access the content that they want to access quicker without wading through the mud that is the stuff they don't want to hear. As always, we thank you guys for watching us. We thank y'all for putting up with us each and every day on the Walsh Riding Network. We thank you for putting up with us on BamaCentral. You can always follow us at BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. Our friends Katie Wyndham, Blake Byler, Hunter Deceiver. We got a lot of great writers, Will Miller as well, putting all kinds of great content for you right there at BamaCentral.com. I want to have Hunter Deceiver on very soon, because he's working on a project. He's going to put together an 85-man roster, an 85-man roster for 2014 to 2023, the years that NCAA football was not existent, the video game, right? The years that the video game was not existent, he's put together an all Alabama roster, and we're going to go through some of those decisions with him in the very near future. We cannot wait to do that, as he's getting ready to publish that for BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. we're looking forward to the season. Only, 70 more days until it gets started, and we'll have it all covered for you right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.